Good morning. The other day in live video just stopped.
Start again.
Right, where?
You start.
There you are.
You start talking, darling.
Alright. Bit of problem here with a bit of technology, but we'll get there. The other day I watched the video. That video was from Anne Toomey. Professor Anne Toomey, according to her. She has an AO after her name, so obviously she's doing the right thing by the government. If you call them our government, because we don't have one, we have a parliament. Right, now I've got to lift my voice because the problem is people can't hear. This video is being recorded and it will be sent out on two different methods, for a reason being in case somebody decides in their wisdom to cut us off, because it's got to stop. Now, what happened? Anne Toomey came on here on the video and she made a lot of claims and statements based on questions put to her by a young bloke from Western Australia with curly reddish hair, and somehow he is involved in the constitutional process of this country, albeit not lawful, according to me and according to some others. They put questions pre-arranged to each other. Obviously, the answers came from documents in front of Anne Toomey or from a computer face that she was looking at. When she was sitting there, she pointed to, above her left shoulder, a row of books, which were the record of the constitutional conventions in black books. Not once did she pull one out and refer to it. She just said they were the constitutional conventions, and they were all there in that book. Well, good luck with that. Under that, she had her books that she wrote. Have I read some? Yes. Do I agree with what she wrote? No. Quite often she writes, some she is truth, some is not. I'll tell you that now. I'm not attacking her. She's in the system. She teaches what the government wants, what the curriculum will be when taught at schools, and that is not the law. A lot came out, so let's put one myth to bed. That the Australian government is a corporation. It never was. It can't be. It has an ABN number, so it's a business. It's a trading company, in fact. So we'll come back to that later, because there is a problem with what she said. The Commonwealth of Australia Proprietary Limited is registered on the US Securities Exchange Commission, not the Australian government. So she was correct there. Just didn't tell you who it was. It was put on there. Its registration number is 0000805157. It's registered in Delaware, District of Columbia, State of New York. Like at a lumpet, there is people from this country there in the embassy that actually run that corporation. That corporation isn't the Australian government, it's the Commonwealth of Australia Proprietary Limited. They're running us. That's how it looks to us. We don't really care because it has no bearing. If you go into Nunn and Bradstreet, there's 18 companies. Those 18 companies are registered with FARA, Foreign Agents Registration Act of America. That's a fact. They can't come back into Australia. They're registered as foreign agent government entities. That they are. But they couldn't come back into Australia unless they came back in under the Corporations Act through Section 51, subsection 20 of the Constitution. Now we come to the Constitution because that's a debatable thing which we got into with this thing. I just sat back and watched it in awe at the nonsense that was actually spread. Now, these companies come into Australia through the Corporations Act, and because of ASIC and the Corporations Act, they have to register with Fair Work Act Australia. To do that, they have to have an ABN number. So what you've got is every public utility, every government department, every state government, the courts, the whole lot have ABN numbers, all registered through there. They say they're not, they deny it, they pull all sorts of garbage. So let's look at what the truth of what's going on behind the scenes. Anne Toomey said this is a book written by two men. Well, that's a pretty classical example of how to make something look insignificant. But Anne, you come unstuck when you presented your little booklet, which was the Commonwealth Constitution in the book form, and you said that that is the Commonwealth Constitution. Unfortunately, it had the Statute of Westminster attached to it. Well, you didn't explain how it could be attached to there as part of it when it really is not. It wasn't put into our system until 1942 with the Statute of Westminster Adoption Act, when John Curtin introduced it to Parliament, and Parliament passed it, and all the rhetoric that goes with the unlawful parliaments we've had. He backdated it in 1931. He negated it. The Constitution's clear. You can't have retrospective legislation. He just wiped it out. You made other statements, and this is actually the one that came to Australia. This is the one came back from Queen Victoria. It even says 63, 64 Victoria, Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act. It's actually 1900 UK. It was put through on, or proclaimed on the 9th of July 1900. See, there is no signature of any queen on this. No. You turn back to the back page. I'm doing this specifically because of what was told now, because it's good. And after the oath on the back, it says who it was done. This was put in place with a letters patent on the 29th of October 1900. And I'll bring it to your attention. Your little document says it's got the index in the back of it. Well, sorry, the correct one has the index on every page, as do most British acts. Have a look, you can see the index under my fingers, and it's there, see? Right there, the index of each section. The reason I'm doing this, because a lot of statements were made by you. Now, in relation to the states, this is a constitution put in place by Western Australia, that federation. 32 sections missing. Who said they could? So we'll come back to that in a minute. This is a letters patent for the Office of Governor. Notice the text next to it, the index. It's a letters patent. 29th of October 1900. It actually says so on this one. And when you go back to the back page, it has, by warrant under the Queen's Sign Manual, Muir Mackenzie. Interesting. Not signed by the Queen, I get that, because it was done by decree. I get that too. So I'm just bringing these out because I'm going to refer back to them several times, including this. You said that the Parliament has plenary powers. Sorry. They have, but not the way you put it. You make out they have the power to pass whatever laws they want, whenever they want. You are an intelligent person. don't try to pretend you didn't know what you were saying, because you did. What you said was correct but incorrect. Does that need explanation? Absolutely. The Constitution is clear. This one. On the sections 1 to 128. You said this is a book. Contains section 1 to 128. This has the 9 clauses. This has the 9 clauses. You pointed to a red book or a brownie red book and said that was the original one. I get that. I've actually seen that document. And is it the same as this? Yes. Now, the problem is, you said this was written in or published in 1901. It was actually published, the original one, 1903 and 1904. Because some of the stuff that's in it, the annotations, were what happened or was added by Queen Victoria. They didn't have the 9 clauses available to them to put to this book before 1901. 9th of July 1900, we got the Act after that. Queen Victoria, by proclamation, added Western Australia into the Federation. That proclamation is on the wall of the Church of England, St George's Terrace, Perth, Western Australia. It's there. You can see it. I acquired a copy of it quite a while back, and am I giving it out? No. There's a reason for that, and I won't tell you now because it's not necessary. You made statements local government was in the state constitutions. Well, thanks for revealing the truth, but not the way you said they are. What you said with this book, it's just a book. It's not the Constitution. Well, actually, that's incorrect. This book contains this. So, in actual fact, even though it has a lot of text around it, it is the Constitution. Then it goes all the way back to section 1. And it goes through the 9 clauses, explains what each of them mean. Then it goes back and it explains 1 to 128, how they come about it, what imperial law, what American law, what Canadian law influenced the interpretation of our Constitution, ours, the people's. Nothing to do with the government. The government is nothing but a pack of dishonest people gathered in political parties, hell-bent on destroying this country, bringing it to its knees, and handing it over to the WEF and the WHO. Can't happen unless we kowtow and bow to them. The texts in here of interpretation were used by the High Court until a few years ago when they stopped using it. Why? Because the influence of the political parties removed it, so it couldn't be used. 1979, the alleged Parliament of this country produced the High Court of Australia Act, clearly destroying the separation of powers between the Parliament and the judiciary of this country. Is it true? Yes, absolutely is. When you look at the Cable decision, known as the Cable Principle, paragraph 52, it says all courts are part of a federal judicial system with the High Court at its summit. Correct. This book, in the annotations, which you have allegedly in your black books you had sitting up here over your left shoulder, if they don't contain the annotations in here and the interpretations of each section, then those books are like every other bit of garbage that comes from the government. Nonsense. Now, let's go back to this book. This book was interpreted. The two men, as you call them, and this book, as you call it, this is the annotated Constitution of the Australian Commonwealth. Is it the little book of pages? No, you are correct there, except for one thing. This contains it. This then goes back and explains each little section. It is a public record added to the interpretation, so that the interpretation would be correct according to the framers of the Constitution. Some people have said, why would this so-called government want the interpretation changed? Well, the same reason why they produced the Green Constitution. The green one. The one you said was exactly the same as this. Either you lied, you forgot, or you certainly didn't know. Because when you open the Green Constitution, it is not the same as this. There's so much that is different, it's unreal. Because it's not the interpretation of the people who put it together. It's the interpretation of the political parties, their lackeys, professors, so-called professors of law. It is a book of nonsense. That's why I refer it to the mucus constitution. Because mucus is a waste product of a human body, full of dead cells, dead viruses, because viruses don't live outside the body, apparently, according to experts. So don't quote me, the experts say it doesn't. It has germs in it, yeah. Germs that go in, come back out again. Who puts it out? Your body does. It's waste. It's rubbish. It has a value of nothing. That's what your Green Constitution has, a value of nothing. Now, you want to denigrate this one, you produce the truth. And the truth's coming out, believe me. I haven't finished. This is the Australia Act. The act that you said was signed by Queen Victoria, but it actually was not. Not this one. The copy that went to England was allegedly signed. Allegedly. And there's nothing on the bottom of it to say when it was proclaimed or anything else. But what I want to put to you is the truth of this. This Australia Act went through the Parliament. And I'll get my glasses because I'm reading. I'm staying off reading for a reason. I'll come to that in a minute. And it says, an act to bring constitutional arrangements affecting the Commonwealth and the states into conformity with the status of the Commonwealth of Australia as a sovereign, independent and federal nation. It's not. It's not. So if you push that rhetoric, you are pushing lies. Whereas the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth and the Premiers of the States at conference held at Canberra on the 24th and 25th of June 1982 and the 21st of June 1984 agreed on the taking of certain measures to bring constitutional arrangements affecting the Commonwealth and the States into conformity with the status of the Commonwealth of Australia as a sovereign, independent and federal nation. And whereas in pursuance of paragraph 5138 of the Constitution, the parliaments of all the states have requested the Parliament of the Commonwealth to enact an act in the terms of this act. Be it therefore enacted by the Queen and the Senate and the House of Representatives of the Commonwealth of Australia as follows. Now, I'll stop it there because really this has exposed so many lies, it's not funny. Bob Hawke did take the Australia Act to England. He told the British Parliament, and it's a matter of Hansard in England, that the people of Australia had agreed. Did you? Did you know about it? You and Toomey said we don't need a referendum. Well, hang on. This is changing the whole status of Australia. But you were scared when this was put through. So you covered your butts, so to speak. But I'm not going to stop there. You didn't tell the truth. You didn't conform to the request of some of the politicians in England who said they would sign it. They would sign it, providing you provided the evidence that the people had agreed. And of course Bob Hawke couldn't do that. He couldn't do it because he lied. Misled and deceived the British Parliament. And you're trying to say termination of power of Parliament of the United Kingdom to legislate for Australia. Interesting. Legislative powers of parliaments of states. And it goes on until 5. Section 2 and 3 above are subject to the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act and to the Constitution of the Commonwealth, and do not operate so as to give any force or effect to a provision of an act of the Parliament of a state that would repeal, amend or be repugnant to this act. The Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act and the Constitution of the Commonwealth, or the Statute of Westminster 1931 as amended and in force from time to time. And it says the heading on there is Commonwealth Constitution, Constitution Act, the Statute of Westminster not affected. The Statute of Westminster was a fraudulent act backdated from 1942 to 1931. So it invalidated. It's a load of garbage. You reckon I'm telling the truth? Not telling the truth? We'll try it on. Now, I want to look at these because you get a fair idea. Proclamation uniting the people of New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Queensland, Tasmania, Western Australia in a federal commonwealth. Imperial Statutory Rules and Orders revised 1948, Volume 11, Australia, page 1027, 1900, number 722, at the Court of Balmoral, the 17th day of September 1900, present. The Queen's Most Excellent Majesty in Council. The following draft proclamation was this day read at the Board and approved. A.W. Fitzroy, by the Queen, the proclamation. Now, the reason I'm putting all this in here because the Queen doesn't just sign the front and it makes it into law. Some of what you put forward, Anne, to me. She doesn't sign it and then issue a proclamation. She signs it, given under our hand at Balmoral this day, and then she signs it on the bottom right-hand corner. That says she approved it after the Parliament has, and it wasn't, and still isn't, and can't. Now, you've got all your constitution here. This is in, and by the way, this is the political parties' first go at changing the constitution according to what we say. Now, the reason I'm going back here to point something out to you. If you could see these, this one and this one, front page is the same. The reason I'm saying that, because the 9 clauses are there. You keep saying the clause 9 establishes the Parliament. Establishes the Commonwealth, does it? Clause 1. This Act may be cited as the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act. The provisions of this Act referring to the Queen shall extend to Her Majesty's heirs and successors. It shall be lawful for the Queen, with the advice of the Privy Council, to declare proclamation that on and after a day herein appointed, not being later than 1 year and all that. The Commonwealth shall be established and the Constitution of the Commonwealth shall take effect on and after the day so appointed. Now, Clause 5. This Act and all laws made by the Parliament and the Commonwealth under the Constitution shall be binding on the courts, judges and people of every state and of every part of the Commonwealth, notwithstanding anything in the laws of any state, and the laws of the Commonwealth shall be enforced on all British ships and all that. The Commonwealth shall mean the Commonwealth of Australia as established under this Act. The states shall mean such of the colonies of New South Wales, New Zealand, Queensland, Tasmania, Victoria, Western Australia and South Australia, including the Northern Territory of South Australia, as for the time being are parts of the Commonwealth, and such colonies or territories as may be admitted into or established by the Commonwealth as states, and each of such parts of the Commonwealth shall be called a state. Originating states shall mean states that are parts of the Commonwealth at its establishment. And then it goes down. So The Federal Council of Australia Act 1885 is hereby repealed, but so as not to affect any laws passed by the Federal Council of Australia and enforced at the establishment of the Commonwealth. Any such laws may be repealed as to any state by the Parliament of the Commonwealth, or as to any colony not being a state of the Parliament. Now, and after the passing of this Act, the Colonial Boundaries Act 1895 shall not apply to any colony which becomes a state of the Commonwealth, but the Commonwealth shall be taken to be a self-governing colony for the purposes of that Act. Now, there seems to be slight discrepancies here, and the reference to New Zealand in Clause 6. So, and you referred to as, they didn't actually go into federation. Well, actually they did. Now, the Commonwealth shall mean the Commonwealth of Australia as established under this Act. The states shall mean such of the colonies of New South Wales, New Zealand, Queensland colonies. The reason they put New South Wales and New Zealand together: Queensland, Tasmania, Victoria, Western Australia and South Australia, including the Northern Territory. Now, what this has revealed just now is that this book, put out by the federal government in 1986 with the Australia Act, removed New Zealand. And you're trying to say, New Zealand didn't become part of Australia, but it actually was part of New South Wales, and still is, until we remove it. The people in New Zealand and the people of Australia. You can put what you like, but Clause 6, the Commonwealth shall mean the Commonwealth of Australia as established under this Act. The states shall mean such of the colonies of New South Wales, New Zealand, Queensland, Tasmania, Victoria, Western Australia and South Australia. Isn't that clear? So New Zealand at Federation was part, and it was an original colony. And you said it never came into Australia. Yes, it did. They actually had a seat in the Parliament of New South Wales because it's part of New South Wales. Has it been taken out? Apparently, yes, according to your book. According to your book. What do you call that? Treason? Fraud? You've got a heap of things you have to clear up. And to me, and start off with, you said local government was in the Constitution. Yes, it is. It was in the state constitution prior to federation. And as I said, not in the form that you put it to. Did it continue after federation? Yes. But the colonies became states in the meantime. Under Clause 7, all the acts that they had authority to make were wiped out by Clause 7. Look at 5138 that you used to create the Australia Act, according to you. 51, which created the Australia Act, 38, says, with the conferral of the parliaments of all the states, and you said that at the beginning of the Australia Act, but you didn't have any. You didn't have any states then. Why? Because the states are created under 107, 108 and 109 of the Constitution. They derive their authority from that, from the Constitution. Do they? Yes. Was it upheld by the High Court? Yes. Come to that one in a minute. 106 allows the state constitutions to continue subject to this. Subject to this. Because they're British acts, the state constitutions are. And what you've concealed is that they are who they are. But the parliaments of those colonies are the local governments. They're the local governments established under imperial law, established under state constitutions. letters patent, made letters patent on the 29th of October 1900 by Queen Victoria in their original state. Original text. Western Australia put one in without it. They did it deliberate. Try and remove Western Australia out of the system. And rightly so, you said they had tried to remove Western Australia out of the later date. Didn't work because it couldn't. It couldn't. The preamble prohibited it. The 9 clauses were put there by Queen Victoria to become part of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia. The Commonwealth Constitution Act 1900 UK, as stated in the Commonwealth Constitution Act, the annotated one, from the public records, clearly states that it is an enabling act. The British Act is an enabling act. It enables the people of the colonies to form states, and the votes and the members selected from those states form the first Commonwealth Parliament. They need the representatives from 6 states to do it because they were all originating states. Can you comprehend that bit? You didn't say that in your lecture, and you don't in anything else. In fact, you say the Parliament has plenary powers. Well, it doesn't. An ambiguous statement? No. A very clear statement that what you said is incorrect. You've been taught nonsense, and you're teaching nonsense. How do I know? Because I read it. You said in your video, read it. I did. I read right the way back to the 16th century, and when there was an upheaval in England and all the law that went with it. I read the lot. Why? Because I can. I took the time to do it. Why? So this country could operate under the people. Now, in the annotated part of this, before Federation, O'Connor was asked, stated in Convention, and it should be in your black book if your black books are accurate. He said, if it was asked of a politician, what is the highest authority in this country? He would say the state constitutions, because they're imperial acts. That was the reasoning, but he didn't say that in there. I'm just putting it in so you know what he was referring to, the imperial acts. Because they were the acts that governed the colonies, like it or lump it. Did anyone have the power to alter it? No. Those little black books you got over your left shoulder show that they didn't. They show they didn't. And come back to that in a tick. Now, what is this plenary power that you refer to? Inside of the parameters set by the Constitution, and that is what it is. It sets legislative authorities. In those areas of legislative authority, the Parliament is granted the right to pass laws in a plenary fashion. Who puts them together? The Governor General in Council. Paragraph 62 to 68 of the Constitution is very clear on that. You don't have to be too bright. If you don't understand that, read it. Like you said to everyone else, read it. You read it. You wake up. You put the truth here, Anne, because what is you're trying to put over is, oh, this will be all right. We don't need this. We don't need that. Nonsense. Every single thing which is an alteration to the Constitution Act, this one needs a referendum. Read 128. 128 and conform. You never did. Never did. You said the referendum in 1974 in relation to local government. It wasn't to add it to the Constitution. Well, perhaps you lived a very sheltered life. Because if the people voted for the federal parliament to finance local government. Listen to what I'm saying, to finance local government, then by doing that we would approve the existence of local government. Can you see that? Or is that beyond your intellectual ability? No, I don't believe it is. I believe you know exactly what I've just said. You also know the Constitution sets the parameters as how we wish to be governed. How do we find that out? In your little black books over your left shoulder. Because it states in there, and it's in here on page 346, it says not all enactments of the Parliament are valid. Only those made pursuant to, in accordance with, and under the authority granted by the Constitution, and those laws only are binding on the courts, judges and people of every state. All other laws are void. Clear? I read it. I comprehended it. I remembered it. You see, while you're setting the people up, I'm setting you up, and have been for a long, long time. Because I can, and I'm allowed to. Because there's two issues. One is lies, the other one is truth. I'm putting truth. I'm backing mine up with decisions of the High Court. Are you bound? Is the state constitutions bound? Do they have plenary powers? No. No. Does the High Court decide that? Oh yeah. Go to HCA 39 of 1915. Sir Samuel Griffiths. Oh, one of the people who wrote the Constitution. At paragraph 148, he said, here you find section 106 binds the state constitution and all laws made pursuant to it to the overriding authority of the Commonwealth Constitution. Clear? Don't believe me? Read it. HCA 39 of 1915. Clear as a bell. All ABN companies in this country trading companies? Go to HCA 11 of 2015. Go there and read it. The Queensland Rail case. Don't try to find gobbledygook ways of getting around the decision of the High Court, because that would be criminal contempt of the High Court, and you don't want to do that, do you, Anne Toomey? And that clearly states, if you've got an ABN number, you provide services for money, then you're a trading company. Why did it say that? Go back to what Howard did, 1996. He proved what I've just said is correct. He made every charity, every religion, no matter what, have an ABN number. Because somehow religions provide services for money. So he regulated against God. Why? That doesn't make sense. Because you can't tax the crown. And he threatened them, if they preach against the government from the pulpit, they'll go through and hit them with all the GST outstanding. Why? Why would they do that? Because they want an ABN number there to tie them to Rome under the Unidroit Treaty of Rome. Another issue you said, Gough Whitlam couldn't change the curriculum of the schools. He did. He removed the constitutional studies from there for a purpose, so the kids wouldn't learn, so that people like you could teach your version. And that's exactly what you're doing, teaching your version, not necessarily the constitutional version, because it's not correct. It's not correct. Did he do it before? Yes, he signed the Unidroit Treaty of Rome. Who told him he could do that? If we believed that what he did was correct, it would overturn the revolution in England in the 16th century and put the Church of England out and the Church of Rome back in, which is what they want, which is what the Freemasons want, the Fabians want, and a lot of other religions. It's what you want. Controlled by the Vatican. It was rejected in the 16th century in England. And what came out of that was a coronation oath of the Queen. Had to be correct. Or the King, or whoever. The oath of allegiance come out of 1 William and Mary. Is it law in this country? Yes, it is. It's in our constitution. It's part of it. Even in your little blue book of nonsense that you call Constitution 1986, it states that very, very clearly, the oath of allegiance. And it goes from one person to the other, one monarch to the other, because the monarch is under the Church of England. Who ran England before then? The Roman Church. The bishops from England went to Rome, told them where to get off. And they didn't like what you just wanted to do, or what the British Parliament wanted to do. They came back and they said, well, we don't believe that the Pope is God on earth, and they broke away from the Church of Rome. And they become archbishops. Basically a similar religion without the idol worship and everything that's in the church, the Catholic Church. And that's not an attack on the Catholic Church. They have idols there, they worship them, that's their business, and I'm not attacking that, nor would I. You can have whatever idols you like, as long as you know at the end result you're going to pay for doing it. But let's get back to what's going on. I said, and it's true, local government is in the state constitutions, but not in the format you said. Not in the format you said. Local government is the state parliaments. Every law they pass is a bylaw to the federal parliament. How do you get that? In this, it'll explain it so clear by the people who framed the Constitution. See, Dr. John Quick and Sir Robert Garran put this together. They were two of the framers of the Constitution with all the others. It isn't written by two people. It's actually the public record, which is your black books, of the constitutional conventions. Is there one in the 1988 Constitutional Convention? No. Why not? Because it didn't involve the people and didn't involve anything lawful. And the end result was nonsense. Now let's go back to local government. Local government is the state parliaments. This book, page 936, the 8th line down, says you can have municipal authorities and local government. Two separate entities. Why? Because the local government is your state parliament. Every law passed is a bylaw to a federal law. Go back to 107, 108 and 109. It establishes the states subject to the Commonwealth Constitution. How? They draw their authority referentially to that Constitution. How? It's a subservient parliament. In this book, you'll find it. You should read it, Aunt Toomey. Read this book and comprehend what the framers were actually saying, as if you don't already know. I suspect you do, and have gone and looked outside of that to change it to what you want. Well, the plenary powers are granted to each legislative authority granted to a parliament, and it's only in that area that they have the authority to pass laws inside that scope. Step outside that scope and there's nothing. Are they accountable to the people? Yes. Page 795, the 4th paragraph. Sorry, I get a little bit mixed with numbers and the dog barking outside, wondering who was coming, but they're not. Right, 795, the 4th paragraph, it says, if you exercise authority throughout the Commonwealth, you've got to state where in the Commonwealth the authority comes from. It refers to anybody who exercises authority under the Commonwealth. Who is the Commonwealth? We are. The Constitution establishes through federation the Commonwealth of Australia from the colonies. They become one colony sitting under a constitution, clear as a bell. They are the Commonwealth. Politicians are elected to serve the people of the Commonwealth. The judges, magistrates, lawyers, courts, all your politicians are all selected and employed to serve the Commonwealth. Every public servant is there to serve the Commonwealth. They are required by 1 William and Mary to swear the oath contained in the Constitution. To swear the oath of allegiance. True? Absolutely is. They become then officers of the British Commonwealth and the Commonwealth of Australia, employed by the people who are the Commonwealth of Australia. They are two separate, joined together by the Constitution, which is an agreement between us and the Crown to federate under one Constitution. Clear enough? Do you understand it? I believe you do. I believe you don't want to. So your local government is a state parliament. Now, get to the garbage that is operating with the blessing of the judicature and the governments of Australia that don't exist in law. Is there a government? Yeah, let's go to that before. Clarify that. The government, federal, is the executive, the legislature and judicature. There is a separation of powers between the executive and legislature, but that flows into one another through the Constitution. You can see that if you take the time to read it. But the separation of powers between those two and the judicature is absolute. What have we got an act controlling the High Court for? Why do we have rules made by a federal parliament controlling the court? Do they? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. We've got cases before the High Court, and they're being controlled by rules. That's treachery to overturn the Constitution. But when you look at Section 42 of the Commonwealth Crimes Act, 1914, that's conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, which is exactly what you're doing. And you would know that, Anthony. You would know that. Or you would be expected to, being high up in the law system, to be fully aware of what that is. Now, we go back to the local government. Local governments are all registered trading companies. They have ABN numbers. They admit providing services for the rates you pay. So they provide services for money. They employ people. The so-called councillors no longer have divisions. Oh, they represent this, that and the other. No, they don't. They go there, they're paid, which they never were before. Why are they paid? Who said you could pay them? Who said that we can have a group of people sitting in a company granted power to make bylaws without any recourse by the people? Who said they can? We didn't. Does anything they pass have any authority in law? No. Is the Act law? No. Why? Now let's look at where it came from. You say local government was always in the Constitution. Yeah, it was, but that was a state parliament. The other one you've got now didn't exist. It was added to the state constitutions in 1979. See, by the reason I put this here in reference to the state constitutions, because this actually, the nice little people in Western Australia did everybody a turn. They actually put number 88 of 1979, that's when local government was added to the unlawful state constitution. Now, your problem is, and you haven't realised maybe, or you know and you want to conceal it, maybe, so let's just leave it as a maybe. Now, the problem is, 1979, they added the Local Government Act. Already said, 1974, that referendum was to authorise the federal parliament to pay an unlawful body. They didn't. They already had the duty to pay money to the states, who are the original local government, the only local government that's lawful under our constitution. You push for years, and all the rhetoric was there was no such thing as local government in the constitution, but it was always there. It was definitely in the annotated one by 1904. Now, Western Australia never, ever put its lawful constitution in place, and still hasn't. So Western Australia is not lawfully constituted under its constitution, does not comply with 106. So its local government, being the parliament, and the local government that is here doesn't exist. And the adding to the purported state constitution by number 88 of 1979 is a fraud. Every state added it then. Did they have the authority? No. Every state was operated by the Labor Party, who held the so-called power right across this country, including at federal level. So then what have we got? The biggest gerrymander you could have. So every state created local government into their state constitutions. But you clowns didn't realise, and this is where your Australia Act and Toomey falls flat in its face. Because when you read section 51 subsection 38, it says there was no authority at federation that the federal parliament could operate, because there was no federal parliament. There wasn't any. Wake up to the fact that there was no federal parliament at federation. The states, the colonies became states. They had to have elections to create the first state parliaments. 5 did, 1 didn't. Understand this. Read chapter 1. There's a pool of people selected by the governors of the states. That pool of people represent everybody in the state, because the Boundaries Act under Clause 8 of the Constitution no longer exists. So there's no boundaries, no electoral boundaries. Doesn't matter if it's in the state constitutions, because it only continues subject to the Commonwealth one. So if it's banned by the Commonwealth one, it doesn't exist. So Mark McGowan lied to us, but we're not getting on to that clown. Go back to the fact that there's no boundaries. So the Constitution's clear. Each person selected or elected represents the whole state. The whole state. So there can't be a gerrymander in the state and manipulate the figures, which is what took place several times in the history of this country. The electoral boundaries don't exist. There's a reason for that. And they, again, at federal level, the only boundary is 12 nautical miles offshore. And I know you said until the Parliament otherwise provides, but we haven't had a lawful federal Parliament. You see, I believe you know that August 1902, New South Wales removed its original constitution and replaced it with another one. 1922, Queensland removed its upper house. These, by the way, are taking out their constitutions, and they're taking out their states, their parliaments, their local government ability to pass laws. And it was done deliberate. 1934, Tasmania and South Australia removed theirs. Now, we now have to go back and look at 1975. Because in 1975, Victoria removed its wantonly, massively butchered constitution and replaced it with another one. So where did you get the conferral of the parliaments of the states? Listen carefully what I'm saying. Where did you get them to create the Australia Act? Where did you get permission to put that there? You didn't. There wasn't any states. There was the state parliaments are created under the state constitutions, subject to the Commonwealth one. Fact. You can't deny that. That's a fact. So where did you get them? When there were no lawful states in existence. Go back to Federation, January the 1st, 1901. When all the states put their original constitutions in place. Western Australia didn't. Was Western Australia an original state? Yes, I've read it. It's in your grub lying constitution. It's in this correct one. And it's in Quick and Garrett, the annotated one. So, now you've got a problem. If you only had 5 states, and one was missing, and they're original states, New Zealand was part of New South Wales, I get that. That's in a lot of other documents, and it's fact. So I'm not going to argue that little bit. Now, you never, ever had a lawful federal parliament. Anne said you can't go back and wipe out all the laws. You don't have to. You don't have to. You know, what you're not comprehended, our Constitution says every single law passed in this country must be passed subject to the Commonwealth Constitution. So put the annotated one out. This says it. So if they've got to be passed subject to the Constitution and their constitutions continue subject to it, there is no power in here to alter the state constitutions. So you're saying the method of alteration of those constitutions is contained in those constitutions. It was until the 29th of October 1900 when Queen Victoria made them letters patent. An ability to alter or change any of the letters patents was vested exclusively in the monarch. Is that correct? Absolutely is. It's in the Statute of Monopolies. Billy Hughes knew it. So did other members of the Fabian Society who sneaked into this country and tried to take over the first parliament. I believe there was somewhat of 7 or 8. The number doesn't really matter. They tried it. So now let's go back and see what took place. You've got to comprehend what these people were doing. Little John Forrest. What he did is in Boulder in Western Australia, in the old town hall of Boulder, on the wall is the history and the factual evidence of what John Forrest did. How he tried to manipulate and control Western Australia, and the miner says, drop dead, idiot, we're not going into your federation under your conditions. We'll go under our own. So now what do you got? A problem. He eventually conceded. Queen Victoria accepted that and wrote the proclamation, which is on the upper floor of the offices of the Church of England, St George's Terrace, Perth. It's there. Go read it. I've got a photo of the whole lot. Friend got it for me. I wasn't supposed to get it, I was told, but who cares, I've got it. And it's hidden away where it can't be touched. For a reason. So now we don't have a federal parliament with plenary powers. We actually don't have a federal parliament. Am I correct? Absolutely. Why? Because the Constitution says so. Our Constitution. Not your green one. Your green one's a load of crap. It has the Constitution 1 to 128. Then it has annotations by professors and politicians and all these brain-dead clowns that wouldn't have a clue what they're talking about. Most of them are following government policy through curriculums in school that mean nothing, and universities which mean nothing. To study the Constitution completely and understand its application of authority, you would have to study it for a lot of years. I started over 50 years ago with an old book. The one you have up on your bookcase, the first one, the old brownie coloured one, which disintegrated years ago. Mine said exactly what this says. You said, oh, it had to be amended or anything else. No, if you were doing it correctly, you would have sent out those amendments. Now, let's look at the second referendum for local government. You said, oh, it failed, it didn't mean anything, wasn't going to do anything. Nonsense. It was a referendum to recognise your version of local government, not the correct version, which is the state parliaments, in the Commonwealth Constitution. It said, do you approve the continuance of local government? Your type. We said no. That's it, gone. Do you approve the establishment? We said no. Gone. It had two others, the empowering and the ability to make bylaws. We said no. You had two answers for a referendum. It's not carried or not carried. That's garbage. That's a lie. Fraud. And that supposition was put there by the federal parliament, which doesn't exist. Calling itself a government. It doesn't exist. Simple. Does not exist. So what actually the people said, no. And you said that is only the second one. I'm not going to argue how many times, because the third referendum was stuffed in the 1988 referendum, 1999 referendum for a republic. We accept Aboriginals were the first inhabitants of Australia, and for reasons I've said previously, they weren't and they aren't. We accept the rule of law. We already had one, total innocence. You've changed it, and you've changed our courts to courts of presumption. Don't care what you and your little red-headed mate Dave say. They are courts of presumption. I know that. I've been in them enough times to see what they do. You walk in there guilty whether you like it or not. The rest of it, I don't want to know about it. It's nonsense. Now, let's get down to the crux of things. 1999 referendum, we voted to retain the Crown. Why didn't you put the Crown back? Why didn't you? Why didn't you dump the Australia Act, which is setting up a system as an independent sovereign nation, getting rid of Britain and the Crown, Western Australia getting rid of the Crown, all the states getting rid of the Crown? Why didn't you put it back? The people said, we wanted it. We didn't vote, oh, no to Republic, that's the end of it. No, we voted, no, you're not going to change it. We want to retain the Crown. Why haven't we got it? Simply because you are not listening to the people. You see, I don't know if you know it, but it has always been the Labor Party's policy to destroy the states. Every state constitution's gone, so they're not there. They have trading companies in their place. To destroy the states and put your so-called local government in there. Those local governments are dictatorial. They answer to nobody, to the authenticity of their bylaws. Are upheld by a judicature, which is another trading company. They got ABN numbers, look at your documents, proves it. So what you're actually doing is running this company with trading companies, registered with the Foreign Agents Registration and Foreign Governments Registration Act of America, as foreign agent government entities. Is there able to recoup any sort of justice through there? Yeah, you are. It's under the US Department of Justice. You can actually apply to them through the US Department of Justice and have the case dealt with on the papers, on the proof of evidence, and we've got plenty. Are we doing that? No. We've got documents in the High Court explain at great length what I've been saying all along. We do not have a system of local government like you're saying. To do that, it's theft. You take hundreds of millions of dollars from the people, you take their land, you remove it from fee simple, which alienates it from the Crown. If the Crown is the only way to tax land or have control over it through the Constitution, but it's not in there. If it is, then we don't own the land. If it's not alienated from the Crown, who owns it? Oh, the Crown owns it. No, the Crown owns the realm of Australia. Who's the Crown? God, in British law. Who's the monarch? God's representative. Put it in perspective and come up with the truth for once. This country is under the direct control of God. 1605, Pedro the Portuguese claimed it. How did he claim it? Oh, look at that. Torres raised the flag. That was his lieutenant on the western side of Cape York, Queensland. And it's now named Torres Strait after Lieutenant Torres, who claimed this as the great Southland of the Holy Spirit. Don't like that? Too bad. That's what it was claimed as. Oh, belong to this, belong to that, belong to... Yeah, right, good. Where was that? First Nation. The first nation ever recorded here is the nation established as the Federation of Australia and as the Commonwealth of Australia. The first recorded nation. The rest is nonsense. Don't try pushing it. You're not telling the truth. The more you push the rhetoric of the government, the more you people look out of place, dishonest, and you're not. I know too many of you to know you're not dishonest people. What you've got to do is hunt for the truth. Put the truth back there. The clowns in this state don't even recognise Vasco da Gama's, Dirk Hartog, Ferdinand Magellan, and all those people that came to this country, and all the other people came to this country. They don't do it because they can't comprehend the truth. They're not interested in it. Now let's go back to the fact. This is the Constitution contained in here, along with the Hansard, the public record from the constitutional conventions of ours, of how this should be interpreted. The High Court used it for years until they were blocked, and they are blocked. And the common law is not decisions of courts. The decision of the High Court forms part of the common law, but the common law is the Constitution of England, Magna Carta, 1688, Bill of Rights, Act of Settlement, Habeas Corpus, and the King James Bible. That is the common law. And you deny that too. You've got a different version. Australia's common law. Well, Lippahar versus the Queen, 1999. Henry Lippahar was from Western Australia, and I read the decision. The High Court said decisions of the Supreme Court, although binding on the inferior courts, where they come from, do not form part of the common law. No precedent there. Don't form part of the common law. However, decisions of the High Court, once published, form part of the common law, and they're binding on the courts, judges and people from every state. Where's the truth there? Right there in front of you. Are you going to look at it? No. They are all before the High Court. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off here, because this is not the end of it. This is the start of the corrupt, treasonous, fraudulent lies that are pouring out of the mouth of people in high places. And to me, I'm not for 1 second accusing you of lying. I'm giving you the option. You either tell the truth, which is the Constitution, you put forward that truth, you admit to putting government rhetoric in there, or you are lying then. You choose. Your poison, you choose it. So you have a lovely rest of Sunday, because now you have exposed the lies. Who local government really is, the state parliaments. The ones you got, the people rejected them. No means no. No to the continuance, no to the establishment. If you can't get that through your head, go back to where referendums come from. States' proposal to the federal parliament. We've never ever had one. So where did you get permission for what you're doing? You had none. Can you tax land? Go to 5138. There was only 7 legislative areas ever exercisable by the Australasian Council, and even less by the colonies. All 7 are contained in section 51 of the Constitution. This one, the one you have a red ribbon around apparently, for want of a good explanation, Anyway, I don't care. The original one had a red ribbon around it, but it's not the one you got, not with the Statute of Westminster attached. So let's go have a look. Can all that be thrown out? It has to be. There's a lot of people asking a lot of questions. Abortion, climate change, the homosexual laws, all the rest of the stuff. I'm not going to answer that. I have answered most of that previously. I'm not getting drawn into arguments on small issues. The main issue is this country is not being lawfully governed. So Harry Gibbs said it's a lawless country. He was correct. He was absolutely correct. Not for the reasons he gave. Some of the things he said were not exactly kosher. So really, most of what he said was correct. Do I know what I'm talking about? And then to me, yeah, I read. I read every single one of these, cross-reference them in my head because I can, because the person that's behind me is a hugely amount more intelligent than all of us put together. And you'll never know because you're not looking. I found him a long, long time ago, and the truth of it, of what I'm doing. And we are going to defeat you. Why? Because the Bible says. You don't like what I'm saying? Too bad. You don't believe in the Bible? Your prerogative. Your prerogative. You'll never get what you want because it's already written. It's already determined. So you have a lovely weekend. That's it. I'm finished.